Welcome. Thank you all for coming out and joining us on this lovely spring day. Give folks just another minute to come on in and get the last cup of coffee and settle in, and then we can chat for a bit. Good morning. My name's Keith Scully. I'm the mayor of Shoreline. I'm delighted to join you here in person for the first time in what seems both like forever and yesterday. So this is actually only a 2-year absence, although like I just said, sometimes it feels like it's been 20, and in another way, I feel like I was just sitting down with somebody, to talk about stuff. I want to thank Eli Porter for providing some music this morning. He's a music student at Shoreline Community College, and I've got a short list of, And I've got a short list of some of the elected officials I'll call out by name, but I wanted to first recognize every one of you. This is a group of the folks who make Shoreline happen. We've got volunteers on boards, we have current and former council members, we've got business leaders, we've got everybody who makes Shoreline the great place it is here today. So calling out a few names seems sort of odd because everyone here deserves recognition. But I do want to recognize City of Mount Lake Terrace Mayor Kyoko Matsumoto Wright, wherever she is. Hey, yeah, welcome. King County District Court Judge who works in Shoreline, Joe Campagna. And is Marcine and just Judge Anderson here as well? There you are. Sorry, I didn't see you over there. Welcome. Yeah. North City Water District Commissioner Charlotte Haynes. Megan Udamai from Senator Patty Murray's office, and Marielle Trumbauer from Representative Pramila Jayapal's office. Chris Esch from Governor Inslee's office, and John Elder from Jesse Salomon, our state senator's office. Wherever he is. Yeah. And Rod Dembowski. Glad you could join us. Hey, Rod, welcome. Yeah, he's our King County Council member. We also have Jack Kahn, who is the incoming president of Shoreline Community College, Shoreline School District Superintendent Susana Reyes. Shoreline Fire Chief Matt Cowan is somewhere around here. There he is. Yeah, and of course our interim Chief Ryan Abbott, Police Department. And I want to acknowledge 2 former Shoreline City Council members who did fantastic service in the past. They're still here with us today. Janet Way and Cheryl Lee. There, yeah. So Cheryl went back to law school, and she was oddly my mentee. At the same time, she was mentoring me as I was joining City Council. It was actually one of the more fun experiences I've had with Shoreline Connections. And I want to next recognize my colleagues on the Shoreline City Council. Each one of them is hardworking and dedicated to the Shoreline community. Ask them to stand when I call your name. Deputy Mayor Betsy Robertson. Councilmember Chris Roberts. Did Evan join us? Evan Povey? Well, thanks to Evan. John Ramsdell. Council members Doris Fujioka McConnell and Laura Mork aren't with us here at City Hall, but are watching via live stream, and I want to make sure to acknowledge them as well. And lastly, I want to recognize Debbie Terry, who has served us for many, many years, and the staff she leads that make all of this possible. So every year this talk has a speech, and our theme this talk does have a speech, but also has a theme. And the theme this year is building connections. And the word build can mean either putting things together or making things stronger. In Shoreline, we're building connections in both ways. We are putting together physical connections through infrastructure investments, creating inviting neighborhoods that are safe and efficient for all modes of transportation and environmentally sustainable. We're investing in our parks and open spaces, connecting people to nature and recreation opportunities, strengthening community connections by working to be an anti-racist and welcoming community where everyone, especially people who have not always felt connected to Shoreline in the past, can feel connected and valued here. We are supporting people who have lost connections through homelessness by helping them find stability through shelters and connecting them to services. We are renewing connections through community events that were suspended for 2 years. And we are strengthening connections through better community engagement, especially with communities and people we haven't traditionally heard from. The past 2 years have been extremely challenging for all of us, and you couldn't possibly give a talk like this without recognizing the impact that COVID has had on all of us. Shoreline has had 10,718 COVID cases, 316 hospitalizations, and 137 deaths. Everyone has been impacted by the pandemic, and for some, the impacts have been devastating. Family members and loved ones have been lost. We faced sickness and fear. Some lost jobs or faced food and housing instability for the first time. But through it all, we have come together as a community to support each other and do what we needed to get through these challenging times and remain connected. The Shoreline community stepped up to help each other, and the outpouring of individual donations, volunteer efforts, and support for each other, usually organized informally, has been amazing to see. For the city's part, working closely with other governmental agencies and community partners, we've helped families and businesses in need. Thanks to federal CARES Act and ARPA funds, we've been able to dedicate more than $2 million to provide support for households who needed it most. This included funding for rental assistance, grocery vouchers, mental health support, tutoring support for students, and personal protective equipment to keep local human service agencies open and able to serve their clients safely. We have also worked to ensure funds are reaching those populations most affected by COVID and who have historically been underserved, including those experiencing homelessness, immigrants and refugees, as well as those who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We established a small business support program that provided over $775,000 in grants to Shoreline small businesses. In partnership with the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce, we hired a business outreach specialist to work with our local small businesses to better understand the challenges they face so we can connect them to the help they need. During the 2020-2021 school year, our recreation staff helped 84 students in grades K through 12 attend school through remote learning camps. Those were folks who, because they had two parents working out of the house or connectivity challenges or whatever, wouldn't have otherwise been able to participate in remote learning. They also provided virtual programming for our specialized recreation participants and supported other city programs. We partnered with the Hunger Intervention Program and the Shoreline PTSA to provide campers with snacks, lunches, weekend food backpacks, clothes, and school supplies. This school year, our teen and tween programs opened back up. Getting kids back into normal routines safely has been a challenge and a priority, but our recreation staff has done magnificent work. While city facilities themselves remain closed to the public from March 2020 through July 2021, city staff continued to work and provide city services to the Shoreline community. We recognize, of course, that the threat of COVID is not over. We will continue to follow CDC and public health guidelines to ensure the safety of our community. More than 94% of the population in Shoreline, age 12 and over, is now vaccinated. Getting vaccinated is still the best way to fight this pandemic, and it's what makes gatherings like this finally possible again. While we've concentrated on the pandemic over the last 2 years, we've also continued to work on the many other critical issues facing our community. Housing in the Puget Sound region continues to be in high demand and short supply, and as of 2017, over 1/3 of Shoreline's households were considered cost-burdened. A household is cost-burdened if they pay 30% or more of their income towards housing costs, and extremely cost-burdened if they pay more than 50%. Among Shoreline renters, 43% were cost-burdened, with 22% extremely cost-burdened. Among Shoreline homeowners, 29% were cost-burdened, with 10% extremely burdened. Hundreds of affordable housing units have already been built in Shoreline through the multifamily property tax exemption program, and requirements for affordable housing in the light rail station areas are mandatory and will ensure inclusive affordability for the life of those buildings. But while the city has adopted regulations and incentives to address the housing affordability crisis, we know our work is far from done. The number of cost-burdened residents will likely increase without more action to preserve existing or construct more affordable housing. Most of the new housing being developed these days consists of market-rate townhomes and studio and one-bedroom rental apartments. While the addition of much-needed housing stock for the professionals attracted to our region's growing innovation economy has enlivened our commercial districts, it does represent a significant shift in the demographics of our community. Under current trends, owner-occupied and family-sized housing units will make up a smaller proportion of Shoreline's housing stock in the future. So what are we doing about that? Well, last year, with support from a Washington State Department of Commerce grant, we completed a housing action plan. The plan identifies our greatest housing needs and looks at different city-led initiatives we can use to help address those needs. The initiatives could help encourage the preservation and development of housing at prices affordable to all of Shoreline residents now and in the future. Housing strategies incorporated in the plan promote housing that isn't reliant on cars or commuting and accessing routine needs, are deliberate about building a racially inclusive community, allow for a diversity of housing types for different family structures and sizes, identify existing affordable housing and encourage preservation, and leverage publicly owned land whenever possible. The Planning Commission has started work on developing cottage housing regulations, and over the next couple of years, we'll study allowing duplexes and triplexes in more areas of the city. We look forward to acting on these in the future. Unfortunately, that work can't come soon enough for some of our most vulnerable residents. Homelessness is a deeply challenging problem that we encounter every day in Shoreline and across the region. We know it isn't a Seattle problem, but a regional one that requires all of us to work together to address. Shoreline has been an active partner in developing local and regional solutions and providing resources to address the issue. In 2015, we adopted a resolution supporting King County's proclamation of emergency regarding homelessness. And since then, we've taken several actions related to addressing homelessness in Shoreline. We've increased our human services funding to include funding for a housing and outreach specialist through Lake City Partners. We supported a severe weather shelter in partnership with the North Urban Human Services Alliance and St. Dunstan's Church. Two of the most significant steps we have taken have been partnering with King County on the opening of the Oaks Enhanced Shelter and partnering with the county and Catholic Housing Services to develop 100 units of permanent supportive housing at 198th and Aurora for people that were homeless or experiencing housing instability. This includes individuals dealing with chronic mental health conditions. The Oaks Enhanced Shelter has been in operation for just over a year, and earlier this year, the 198th project received final funding to move forward with construction, which hopefully will begin later this year. Here to talk a little more about those two projects and the importance of working together to address homelessness is Leo Floor. Yeah. Leo is the director of King County's Department of Communities and Human Services, and I was delighted to work with him on homelessness projects. This is the first time, as for many of us, that I've met him in person. So welcome to Shoreline. Look forward to what you have to say.
All right. First, thank you, Mayor Scully, and thank you to the council and to the city of Shoreline. I'm glad to be joined here by Councilmember Dembowski so that we can, on behalf of King County government, acknowledge a city that I think is really a leader in difficult and important work. I'll be quick, and I've got 3 examples. But first, just to echo something that the mayor said, we face regional problems, and we almost forget the meaning of that word, but I'm a Army guy at heart, and regionalism is my version of teamwork. And we got to work together to solve these problems, and we know what happens when you try to go it alone, either in a small team or as a region. So a couple of examples. First, it's not actually on the slides, but 2 years ago I was coming to Shoreline quite a bit because we had these 2 giant white tents on a soccer field. With Councilmember Dembowski's help, actually, in the city, we were able to site that. That became the fastest sited, and they called them field hospitals at the time. But that, to me, was all I needed to know, that not only does the city of Shoreline have plans, but you act. And I think action is the other element besides teamwork that really inspires me from the city. So we were able to erect those 2 tents. Ultimately, we were able to help people who were experiencing homelessness. And I think really importantly, if this pandemic had been worse, and if you remember, we didn't know at the time, you already saw how many people lost their lives, but if this had been an even worse pandemic, Shoreline was going to be the epicenter of our regional ability to respond to people if our hospitals began to fail. So you stood ready, you acted at that point, and that's something that I'll be grateful for the rest of my career. The second thing, the Oaks. We pioneered here in Shoreline a model of shelter that now feels common sense. But you go back 2 years ago, the way that we help people experiencing homelessness is to fit as many of them as possible into as few spaces as possible and to provide as little as we could. That echoes some darker chapters in our history, the idea that you just got to fit as many people in there as possible. And at Shoreline in the Oaks, we had a city that was willing to act quickly, extraordinarily quickly in homelessness time, to purchase a facility, to set up a partnership, and people are receiving shelter in that facility now. They're in single rooms or perhaps doubled up. It's 24/7. They're able to stay there. They're able to establish the sense of calm and dignity that we know is important, and that is now the norm across the region. That is the standard, and the Oaks really set that out as possible, and I'm grateful to you all for that leadership as well. And then the third piece, and I'm happy to give a little bit of an update, we just actually closed on the 198th project. The site work began this week. It's going to have 100 units of supportive, affordable housing. Will open next year. As the mayor mentioned, it is purposefully designed to help folks who need that help. And I'm really proud to say that at King County, we provided some financial assistance for that. So about $13 million went into that project. But more importantly, as we go forward, we hope to really be able to provide this again as an example of it doesn't have to take 10 years to decide that we need to do something and then take another 10 years to implement it. We can act swiftly. Our community expects us to act swiftly, and that level of teamwork and that speed and intensity of action is what I see from the city of Shoreline. So that's my 3 examples of why I'm proud to be here this morning and partner with the city of Shoreline. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Leo. Now I want to talk about the future. In 2013, we completed our first climate action plan to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions associated with transportation, building energy use, and solid waste generation in Shoreline. While we've completed many of the recommended actions in the plan, we still have a lot of work to do to reduce our emissions to the level needed to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. Climate change is already having huge impacts on communities around the world, including right here in Shoreline. We're already experiencing poor air quality from increased wildfire smoke, hotter summer days, and increased flooding. We will continue to face these and other negative impacts unless we act over the next 10 years to drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions, specifically those emissions from activities like driving cars and heating and cooling buildings. We're updating the Climate Action Plan. The updated plan will outline key actions the city needs to take to reduce community-wide emissions and prepare our community for the impacts of climate change. The plan will identify climate action strategies that also improve equity, increase community resilience, and protect ecosystems in Shoreline. It is important that our solutions to climate change benefit everyone in our community, especially people who are most likely to be affected, often called the frontline communities. These are community members that face historic and current inequities, often experience the earliest and most acute impacts of climate change, and have limited resources and/or capacity to adapt to those impacts. Their voices are often the least heard, even though they may be the most valuable ones to add because they're the most vulnerable to climate impacts. This speech jumps around a fair amount. If you're not keeping up, it's okay. So, anti-racist community is one of our commitments always, but more so in the last couple of years. For too long, many people in our communities have been left out of the decision-making process. Shoreline, we're working consciously to change that. We want all residents to feel valued. We envision a community in which people from all backgrounds have equitable access to opportunities to ensure they and their families can be successful. Shoreline is home to an increasingly diverse community. 40% of Shoreline residents identify as people of color. 1 in 5 Shoreline residents is foreign-born, and 1 in 4 speaks a language other than English in their home. 49% of Shoreline School District students are youth of color. In 2020, we committed to building an anti-racist community. As an organization, we've turned that into a focus on 3 areas. First, working to increase the capacity of city staff to deliver services with an emphasis on equity and inclusion by providing mandatory staff training on institutionalized racism, working with diverse populations, and evaluating city policies and procedures. Working to improve access to city information and services by residents from diverse communities by promoting outreach and community engagement through use of language-specific resources and intentional outreach to our diverse communities. And finally, we're working to increase community-based support for diverse communities by providing technical help and support to community groups and organizations serving diverse populations that promote multicultural and anti-racist efforts. Nationally, we've seen a lot of pushback against those kind of efforts, and I'm proud that as a community, we have continued to be resolute in our pursuit of becoming anti-racist. This work isn't just important, it is absolutely essential to making Shoreline the place we want it to be. Switching gears yet again. In preparation for the opening of Linwood Link Light Rail, we've been planning for changes that will come with it. 8 different transportation projects right now linked to the opening of Shoreline South and the 148th Street Light Rail Station. The goal for all of these projects is to ensure pedestrians, bicyclists, transit, and auto traffic can get to and from the station and through the 145th corridor as safely and efficiently as possible. We've reached 90% design for the $38 million 148th Street non-motorized bridge project. We've learned that people living within a half mile of transit are far more likely to walk or bicycle than those that live further. The 148th Street Bridge opens up a significant amount of land within the half-mile radius of the station. Through local resources and partnerships with King County and Sound Transit, we have enough funding to complete design and construct the critical first phase of the project, which is the landing on the east side of the bridge. We expect to complete the East Bridge landing by mid-2023 and get full funding to complete the entire project by 2025. Earlier this year, we worked closely with our legislative representatives in Olympia to secure significant state funding through the state transportation package, and we've been working closely with our federal representatives to secure federal funding, hopefully for the remainder. Yeah, thank you. That's not our only transportation project. In November 2021, the State Transportation Improvement Board awarded the 148th Street and I-5 interchange project a $5 million grant, which provided the last amount needed to fund fully fund this $30 million project. We plan to replace the signalized intersections on both sides of I-5 with roundabouts and update lane configurations on the bridge. We expect to complete the design and permitting by the end of this year and begin construction in 2023. We're also designing improvements for the 145th corridor between Aurora and I-5. The design will widen 145th to accommodate design elements that improve traffic operations, safety, and mobility. We're planning construction of that project in 3 phases: I-5 to Corliss, Corliss to Wallingford, and then Wallingford to Aurora, which includes a transition to Linden and the interurban trail. The goal is to complete phase 1 by 2024. We expect to complete design and right-of-way acquisition by the middle of this year. We have funding to complete the designs for phase 2 and 3, but we need more funding to complete the right-of-way acquisition and construction, and that work will be completed as funding becomes available. Light rail will be transformative for Shoreline, and we're already seeing it. The planning we started in 2013 will hopefully help us to create a more sustainable community for everyone to enjoy. Increased density around the light rail areas will help create more housing choices, allowing more people of various socioeconomic levels and needs to live in Shoreline. Whether you are a new family buying an older single-family home, an older resident downsizing to a townhome, or a single individual just starting out who is renting their first apartment, we've been planning for a community that will hopefully meet all these needs. Development efforts are also designed to help address climate change. By creating denser, more walkable communities, particularly around light rail and other transit, we can better reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. In comparison with denser developments around transit, a typical existing shoreline home produces more than 3 times the greenhouse gas emissions from energy use due to a larger size and lower efficiency and due to more trips taken by car. A typical home in East King County, forgiveness to those who are from there, produces about 8 times the emissions as one around Shoreline's light rail areas. The energy benefits of denser, more walkable communities are clear. Now to say a few more words about some of the economic development occurring in Shoreline is our Economic Development Manager, Nate Dom.
Thank you, Mayor. Wow, what a great crowd. Great to see you all. And as the mayor said, it's just great to be together. And you know, Mayor Scully, your remarks are very consistent. It's about connections. So I just wanted to help reinforce you're doing fine on the theme. I think it's a great theme. And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge our partners at the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce, Paul and Laura, board members of the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce, which has been our really critical partner in some of the small business support that you heard about earlier during the pandemic. So thank you, Paul and Laura, and everyone at the Chamber. So, with the long-awaited removal of the vacant former Sears complex finally underway, I think we've all been looking forward to being able to say that, a new downtown for Shoreline and neighboring communities is coming into view, Shoreline Place. Over more than 10 years, the City of Shoreline has undertaken numerous policy and programmatic steps to ensure the centrally located Shoreline Place Community Renewal Area, or CRA, experiences a revitalization fully matching its potential. The long-awaited first redevelopment project at Shoreline Place, a 330-unit apartment building called The Current, opened in 2021, adjacent to the interurban trail across Westminster Way from Central Market. You can't miss it. The success of the project is it's leasing up at a blistering pace of more than 24 units per month. And that success is really indicative not just of the overall strength of the local housing market, but it's really serving to support the vision of the CRA, the high-quality mixed-use urbanism. That market's success just really couldn't be more vital to realizing the vision of the CRA, because while we as the city and the community created that vision for the CRA, it's, you know, the buildings, the plazas, those tree-lined streets within Shoreline Place, they're all being constructed with private capital. And so over the course of the next 10 to 20 years, the Keystone Sears property at the center of Shoreline Place will be redeveloped by Merlot & Geyer Partners as a $400 million mixed-use urban village of 3 new city blocks framed by a network of those tree-lined streets maintained by the property owner but enjoyed by all thanks to easements for permanent public use and enjoyment. The private investment into the inside of the CRA is also funding improvements on public rights-of-way on all sides, with new frontage along Dayton and Westminster already completed. Improvements to 160th have also begun and will continue as the CRA redevelops. Merlot & Geyer anticipates completing its first phase, a gateway staircase and terrace at the corner of North 155th Street and Westminster Way, flanked by 2 new retail buildings in 2023. Negotiations are underway with several restaurants, cafes, fitness studios, financial institutions, and providers of other services. Washington State is also reinvesting in the CRA, having recently renovated the Department of Transportation regional headquarters and welcoming the addition of hundreds of Washington State Department of Ecology workers, which, with the ongoing transition back to more in-person work, will increase the daytime population in the CRA significantly for the benefit of local eateries and other businesses. Looking backwards at an important connection, and many partnerships made this possible, but the completion in 2017 of the $140 million transformation of Aurora Avenue North into Shoreline Signature Boulevard has been, since at least 2018, one of the city's top economic development priorities, and it's led to hundreds of millions of dollars in investment. At 192nd and Aurora, for example, just across the street from Metro's Park and Ride, a new project called 192 Shoreline is under construction. The builder was attracted to the site with its excellent access to transit service and services and amenities, and the city's affordable housing code incentives, such as park impact fee and transportation impact fee exemptions. The 7-story building's 250 apartments will be permanently affordable to those earning no more than 50% of area median income, and 55 of the units are reserved for people with disabilities who will receive supportive services such as the walking club, coordinated by on-site community project coordinators. For many, the walking club and other community project programs are the highlight of their week, ensuring regular interaction with community members, structured activities to support positive behavioral health, and a sense of purpose and connection. We're thrilled to have this new infusion of residents right near the geographic heart of our city. It's an example not only of the city's commitment to supporting the creation of affordable housing, but it also shows how the evolution of Shoreline Signature Boulevard, and I never get tired of saying that, can continue this vision of a vibrant, urban, walkable environment in an inclusive way. Redevelopment of Shoreline's 2 future light rail stations areas has largely consisted so far of townhomes, about 500 of them, actually more than 500 townhomes in just the first 2 years since that was added to the city's land use code as a housing type. Now, major mixed-use multifamily projects are expected to begin reshaping those core areas immediately adjacent to the stations themselves. The first project in the area nearest the Shoreline South 148th Street Light Rail Station is the 8-story, 252-unit Ion Apartments on Northeast 149th Street, just west of 5th Avenue. The development includes ground floor commercial space. The project also includes, yes, yay for commercial space. It also takes advantage of an update to the city code, which allows projects to front directly onto station areas versus having a setback as they would from other types of properties. City code requires the developer to construct frontage improvements such as sidewalks, amenity zones, bike lanes, undergrounding of power lines. These frontage improvements will encourage pedestrian and bicycle access through the area to the station. They'll also provide access to that 148th Street non-motorized bridge you heard about earlier, which will link Shoreline's Parkwood and Ridgecrest neighborhoods. So significant reinvestment is reshaping Shoreline's commercial areas into vibrant, walkable urban districts. When Sound Transit Link Light Rail service opens in the next few years, it will be in a community transformed. And the change is dramatic, and the cost of newly constructed housing is increasing dramatically in our region. But according to real estate data company CoStar, newcomers moving into Shoreline are often pleasantly surprised by the price of apartments within walking distance to shopping and restaurants and high-capacity transit. This growing population is increasingly adding to the demand for shops and restaurants, and that's creating the very vibrant urban conditions that are necessary for attracting today's workforce talent. And that makes this next chapter of the city's history one that we will work together to write, really just filled with many exciting opportunities, at least equal to, if not far greater, than the challenges we face. With that, it is my pleasure to get to introduce City Manager Debbie Terry. Debbie?
Thanks, Nate. And I was just reflecting as Nate was talking. I remember a few years ago when we were doing this, we kept saying, only 10 years till light rail comes, only 8 years. We are almost there. In some of those pictures, we can actually see those stations out there and the development that's coming around that is going to support them. So congratulations to many elected officials who have set the stage for that in many different organizations. So as an organization, we have experienced a lot of change and transition in the past 2 years. Since January of 2020, we have 83 employees who are new positions to the city, and 58 of those are brand new to the city of Shoreline. That's about a third of our number of employees. And the other thing that is happening is we're becoming more diverse and younger. Believe it or not, we are getting younger. And nearly half of our staff are millennials now. And while that much change in such a short amount of time can be stressful on an organization, it also provides opportunities for growth and improvement. And we are excited to have an amazing group of very talented people working for us who are dedicated to serving this great community. And it is their work that you see every day throughout the city. Another big change is a switch to a more hybrid model. Many of you are experiencing that in your own workplaces. And we're doing that here at City Hall. We are converting conference rooms and the council chambers to allow for hybrid remote work. And we even had our first council meeting hybrid on Monday night. I think it went very well. But the great thing about that is it allows people to participate from wherever they are. And so we have seen actually a good outcome as we've made this move. So we encourage you to participate on Monday night. You can put on your pajamas and sit back. You can drink whatever you want and enjoy the city council meetings. Another area where we have seen some change is in our police department. Newly appointed King County Sheriff, Patty Cole Tyndall, has permanently promoted our former police chief, Sean Ledford, to the King County Sheriff's Office command staff. And we have been so fortunate to have Ryan Abbott serve as our interim police chief, and he has been doing so since January. Ryan's back there. Yeah. And now with Chief Ledford's permanent appointment, we will begin a more in-depth recruitment process for the Shoreline Police Chief position later in June. We're still evaluating the process that we will do for that full recruitment, but I can tell you that there will be an opportunity for the public to meet any candidates before a final selection is made. And we expect to have our permanent chief appointed by the end of the summer. So I just want to say a thank you to Chief Ledford, and I think we've been very fortunate to have Chief Abbott here in Shoreline. They both have been very committed to working with the community members to ensure that everyone feels safe and respected. So maintaining a safe community for all is important for the city leadership. Events over the past few years, both locally and nationally, have prompted significant changes of interest in how we deliver public safety services and whether there are alternatives to police officers being the only party responsible to deliver these services. The North Sound Radar program is one such alternative response program that provides Shoreline Police with more tools when responding to calls in our community. And to discuss the program further is Radar's project manager, Brooke Butner.
Thanks, Debbie. Good morning, everybody. So as Debbie said, I'm Brooke Bittner, she, her, and I manage the North Sound Radar Navigator program. The Radar Navigator program is an alternative approach to law enforcement, serving people in crisis in Shoreline, Lake Forest Park, Kenmore, Bothell, and Kirkland, all across North King County. And I'm delighted to be here today in person to give a quick history of the program in Shoreline and a glimpse into the future of crisis services for North King County. Radar was actually started here in Shoreline by the King County Sheriff's Office, the Shoreline Police Department, when officers recognized the need to share information about folks that were in crisis due to behavioral health or developmental disabilities, and share strategies on de-escalation. The deputies here in Shoreline soon recognized that they also could benefit from a social worker to help navigate people to the community of care. Over time, Shoreline began working with neighboring jurisdictions, the other 4 cities I mentioned, to share resources and eventually to build a single program, the Radar Navigator program, serving the people of all 5 cities. Almost 3 years ago, the Radar cities received a grant through the King County Mid-Behavioral Health Levy, largely thanks to Councilmember Dembowski, and then administered by the Department of Community and Human Services. So we're so happy to partner with both of those. And that funding allowed the creation of a program manager position, so that's me, and funding for 6 part-time contracted navigators. Navigators are mental health professional social workers who do both crisis de-escalation and help refer and navigate people into the community of care so that they don't fall into crisis again, aren't needing another 911 call, another police visit. During the last 3 years, our program has slowly grown, and in 2021, we served about 400 people in crisis. In early 2022, we transitioned to a new phase, and this is the super exciting part that I have to talk about, where we are hiring full-time employees as navigators and are on the cusp of expanding to really wall-to-wall service for the residents of North King County. The cities of North King County share a vision of the future where all people in our community have access to behavioral health services and supports. And when they do fall into crisis, they have access to the right resource at the right time. Sometimes that's police, sometimes that's a firefighter, and sometimes that's a social worker like me. The Navigator program will have social workers available 7 days a week, eventually 24 hours a day, initially about 10 to 12 hours a day, to respond directly to people in crisis when appropriate. That means that navigators will respond with our police across the 5 cities. This is called a co-response model, and independently in their own crisis response vehicles, which is often referred to as a community response. They will also be able to do proactive outreach to people who may be living homeless, may be at risk for crisis, or who the navigators know need a little extra support to keep from falling into crisis. I'm so excited that the City of Shoreline, the Shoreline Police Department, and Chief Abbott has been a great supporter of the program, and the Shoreline City Council as well, share this vision, and I'm looking forward to building a better, safer, and more supported community together.
We are so lucky to have Brooke working on this program. If you couldn't tell by the smile on her face, she is enthusiastic and a continuous cheerleader to get this program implemented. So thank you, Brooke. So ever since incorporation, Shoreline residents have been strong proponents of our park system. In 2006, our residents approved the very first park bond. Last year, that levy expired. And this year in February, our residents approved another park bond with a 70% approval rate. We will use the proceeds from that park bond to make significant improvements to Brugger's Bog, Hillwood, James Keogh, Richmond Highlands, and Briar Crest community parks. Improvements will include such things as playgrounds, splash pads. Yes, it will get sunny, it will get warm. Splash pads will be a great addition. Multi-sports courts, walking trails, picnic shelters, off-leash dog areas, and a fully accessible play area for people of all physical abilities. In addition, we will also invest in park amenities for 3 other parks. We will construct a new off-leash dog area and play area at Ridgecrest Park, upgrade the off-leash dog area and convert the dirt soccer field to grass at Shoreview Park, and make the Education Center and Children's Garden accessible to people of all abilities at Krukeberg Botanic Garden. We will also install public art throughout the city. We have already received great input from the community on the preliminary park project designs, and we look forward to working with the community over the coming year to continue the design process on these priority projects and to help make the vision of our community for parks a reality. So stay tuned. We hope to deliver these in record time in the next couple of years. In addition to the park improvements, we will also use proceeds to purchase property to expand park space. This includes covering the cost of property already purchased in anticipation of the park bond to expand Paramount Open Space, Brugger's Bog, and Rotary Parks. The bond also includes funds for additional parkland acquisitions in the light rail station areas and other parts of the city. And in addition to these acquisitions, in 2020, using Conservation Futures tax grants and park impact fees, we purchased property for our 2 newest parks, Edwin Pratt Memorial Park on 185th Street and Westminster Park in the Westminster Triangle neighborhood. So there are plenty of park projects for us to be working on over the next many years. In addition to parks, there's a need for sidewalks, and this has been a priority for our community and the City Council since incorporation. Sidewalks not only create safe routes for pedestrians and improve accessibility for people of all abilities, but as discussed previously, creating walkable communities helps reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And in 2018, the City Council approved a sidewalk prioritization plan and an increase in the vehicle license fee to support sidewalk repair and rehabilitation. And later in 2018, Shoreline voters approved a sales tax increase to fund the construction of new sidewalks. And we started that with 12 projects that were listed on the ballot measure. And since that time, staff has focused on developing and implementing both of these programs, rehabilitation and new sidewalks. So our two rehabilitation projects that we'll be working on over the next 2 years, one is at 15th Avenue Northeast from 155th to 175th Street, and the other is 5th Avenue Northeast from 165th to 175th. Both of these corridors serve bus routes and have significant barriers to access for people with mobility issues. I don't know if you've walked on 5th Avenue in this area before, but you got to be careful. And I can only imagine people that have those mobility issues. And those barriers have been created as a result of tree root damage and insufficient curb ramps that make accessibility difficult. So we're going to start with construction on 15th Avenue section this year and plan to start on the 5th Avenue next year. We estimate that this will be an investment of $2.3 million to address these areas. Our new sidewalk program has made significant progress. We completed an implementation plan that will see all 12 projects included in the measure completed by the end of 2028. We completed the first project along 1st Avenue Northeast between 192nd and 195th last year. This project used pervious pavement for surface water management and includes an 11-foot sidewalk that allows for bicycles to share that space. It also provides a direct connection to the 195th corridor connector pathway and completes a gap in the sidewalk network along 1st Avenue. Construction on the second new sidewalk project located along 5th Avenue started earlier this year, and we are building sidewalks and bike lanes on both sides of 5th from 175th to near 182nd Court, where it will connect to the improvements completed by Sound Transit. These improvements will provide a direct connection for people moving both on bikes and walking to the new Shoreline North 185th Light Rail Station area. And the 5th Avenue improvements will also act as an on-street connection for the trail along the rail. For this project, we ended up dropping our standard 5-foot amenity zone so that we could preserve the maximum number of trees as possible. And with all sidewalk projects, we have to work to balance the mobility needs of all users and the desire to protect our trees. In 2021, we've begun the design process for 20th Avenue Northwest, and so this is a connector to Saltwater Park, and we will complete that design and hopefully begin construction later this year. So those are exciting things that are happening, and now I'm going to turn it over to the mayor to wrap up our morning and talk a little bit about the city's finances and a potential levy lid lift renewal later this year.
Thank you, Debbie. And we, of course, saved for nearly the end the thing that will get you out of your seats, ready to start your day and all fired up, the budget. So in the fall of 2020, as the pandemic was hitting, we expected we would have a significant impact on city revenues. We thought they were going to just crash. And that didn't happen. While that may have been the case for some parts of the region and for some parts of the city's revenues, we actually experienced robust performance in retail, trade, and construction sectors, which helped ease the impacts to the city's revenue streams. Areas of the budget that were affected included our recreation programs. We expected our recreation programs to resume at regular levels for the whole 2021 to 2022 biennium, but given that the pandemic extended throughout 2021, we had to cancel or change our programming to ensure compliance with public health regulations. As a result, we saw a loss of rental and registration revenue. But even with those losses, we've continued to maintain a healthy financial position. Our financial health continues to be strong. We have healthy financial reserves. We have a AA+ bond rating, which means something to some of you. Standard & Poor's highest assessment for fiscal management, and we continue to receive clean state and federal audits. Achieving such positive ratings requires tough budget decisions at times, and will require more in the future to ensure that we continually abide by strong fiscal policies. There's a unique thing under Washington law, though, that even with our strong financial position and conservative budgeting principles, we continue to face a structural imbalance when looking at our financial forecast. The cost of basic services continues to grow faster than the revenues that fund those services. Why? Well, there's a state-mandated 1% cap on property tax increases. And if you follow inflation, that's not enough. So inflation rises faster than the revenue can. But with voter approval, we can address this with a levy lid lift that allows Shoreline to exceed the 1% limit. Shoreline voters approved such lifts in 2010 and 2016. They're 6-year periods. Passage of those levy lid lifts allowed the city to reset the property tax rate and increase the annual levy just by the rate of inflation each year for those 6 years. The 2016 levy expires at the end of this year. So in February, the city manager appointed 13 Shoreline residents to a Financial Sustainability Citizen Advisory Committee, which does not have an acronym. The city manager tasked the committee with reviewing the city's budget and finances, with the primary focus being potential replacement of the 2016 levy lid lift. They recently completed their work and recommended that the city council place another levy lid lift on the November ballot to ensure that the city continues to provide the same level of services we've all come to expect and rely on. This summer, the council will decide how we're going to act on that recommendation. And ultimately, if there's something on the ballot, it will be up to the Shoreline voters to decide if we should have another levy lid lift. For our final topic, and the one that I hope actually will get us out of our seats and excited, summer events. We've canceled them for the last 2 years. We had to, but I'm excited to see them back in Shoreline this year. All these events will continue to meet city, CDC, and public health guidelines, and obviously if those things change, our response to them will change too. But as of right now, we encourage everyone to enjoy one of our lunchtime concerts and events. Family and friends of all ages to one of Shoreline's beautiful parks for the free concerts at lunchtime. First show is July 12th at Richmond Beach Saltwater Park. And then every Tuesday evening from July 12th through August 2nd in Cromwell Park, you can put your karaoke skills to work with karaoke in the park. I've promised I will not. For something more active, come explore neighborhoods, parks, and trails on some of the best walking routes in our city with Shoreline Walks. Although those are designed for adults ages 50 plus, the walks are open to all ages and abilities. We also have our low tide beach walks. You can explore and investigate the fascinating world of marine beaches at Richmond Beach Saltwater Park during low tides, see sea stars, crabs, and other creatures who live in Puget Sound, guided by volunteer beach naturalists. Finally, we're happy to have Celebrate Shoreline back in August. It's the City of Shoreline's birthday. It's a festival with 2 stages with live music and shows, a beer garden, pony rides, children's theater, food, a toy workshop, hands-on activities, and more. All of these events, and hopefully many more, can be found on our website at shorelinewa.gov. I want to thank you all again for being here with us this morning. This is one of the first large events many of us have been back to since pandemic. It has been truly delightful to be in the same space with folks talking about Shoreline and its future. And I look forward to working with all of you to build connections as we go forward. Thank you.